Ukrainian officials say a maternity hospital has been destroyed in a Russian airstrike. It comes as a former commander of British forces says it is time to contemplate assassinating Vladimir Putin. Also tonight, a row as the Irish government won't provide military support to Ukraine. And Harry Potter creator J.K. Rowling slams Labour, who refused to define the meaning of a woman. Good evening. We put the number up at the very top of every Nolan Live because you are at the heart of this programme. 030 30 80 55 55. And it is a tragic night. It's tragedy upon tragedy, isn't it? Every night over the last many weeks have been sad and have pulled at our sense of humanity. And many of us tonight cannot believe what happened today. A maternity ward and a children's ward have been destroyed in a Russian airstrike on a hospital in the southern city of Mariupol. President Volodymyr Zelensky says people are trapped under the wreckage.
Люди есть тут?
Vladimir Putin should be assassinated, or that is at least one of the options we should be considering. This is from the former commander of armed forces in Afghanistan, Colonel Richard Kemp. We'll speak to him in just a second. It's day 14 of the war, and the devastation and death in Ukraine continues. So what do we do? The Justice Minister here, Naomi Long, told Belfast Live she would support enforcing a no-fly zone. Doug Beattie, the leader of the Ulster Unionist Party, disagrees. And you might hear people talking about Irish neutrality on Ukraine. Do you know what that means? It means the Irish government, as a policy, won't fund or give any weapons to Ukraine. Now, the British do. The United States of America do. Germany has changed its policy on military neutrality. In January, as Russia's military built up, threatened Ukraine, the German government declined to support Kyiv with lethal aid. After the invasion, Germany sent 1,000 anti-tank weapons and 500 Stinger anti-aircraft defence systems to Ukraine. So you can see the different positions. Do we go in hard? Are sanctions enough? Do we stay out of it? I just want this to be a night where we in Northern Ireland have a conversation about this. So please pick up the phone. 030 30 80 55 55. It's why we're live on BBC One. In fact, will we start with a call? James in Derry. Hello, James.
Hello, Stephen. How are you?
I look at, like I'm like the rest of us, I look at that, the bombing of that hospital tonight. We don't know that it was targeted deliberately. The UN are saying 18 children's hospitals have been targeted. So what do we do, James?
I come from this, from what was called about Irish neutrality, right? And I come from it from the point of view that I grew up in the late 60s and the 70s. And I have a lot of empathy for the people in Ukraine because I grew up in the same situation. I lived in a city where the army came into it in tanks with guns, killed 14 people on Bloody Sunday, jailed my father without trial. I know we grew up in this. The people in the north suffered, and irrespective of we say it's a different time and a different place, but if we're talking about Irish neutrality, the Irish government marched to the border and didn't come in to protect the nationalist people
Yeah.
in the 70s. I understand exactly how the Ukrainian people and the children. I was one of them.
Yeah, but
Hundreds of my friends were.
But you know what? Not everything is about Northern Ireland. The British government were not shelling Derry. What we are seeing on our screens tonight is something that we never imagined we'd see in a whole lifetime. I don't think we did.
I can't understand that. How can you, a man who's been on the radio for 20 years, say that you could never imagine a city being shelled when every single day for the last 20 years there's been conflict around the Middle East, conflict in so many countries that you can't imagine cities being shelled? I have watched the Palestinian
In Europe, I meant.
people.
In Europe, I meant.
In Europe, I have watched the Palestinian people. See, why as a victim in Europe or Africa or the Middle East, why are they so different? Is it because of they're white and they're like us as Tubra, he says in RTE, they're just like our children going to school, blonde-haired, and they're just like the people getting dropped off at school? As the kids in Yemen and the kids in Syria who were bombed by Putin. Putin killed thousands of Syrians, and we didn't put the Russian ambassador out of Dublin.
Do you know what?
Why not? We didn't put the Israeli ambassador out when they've been bombing Gaza for years.
Do you know what, mate? Fair point. Maybe this feels like it's closer to home, rightly or wrongly.
It's 2,000 miles away. It ain't closer to home, Stephen. It ain't closer to home. A British journalist for The Sun honestly says that when he saw people building barricades in Ukraine with tires, it was reminiscent of, I actually thought he was going to say Belfast or Derry. He says Southern England in 1940 when the Nazis were going to come in. That's Dad's army stuff. The Nazis weren't coming into Southern England. There was no loads of tires because there was very few cars. And this kind of thing that this is close to home, it ain't close to home. This has been going on for a lifetime.
Do you know what I think we are? I think there's some of us frightened about how close to home could this potentially come. And I think that there are some of us frightened that when we see Vladimir Putin, someone who has been welcomed by world leaders who have tried to keep him in a certain position for many, many years, just how when that goes wrong, how dreadfully wrong. And it has gone wrong in the past, but look at the potential now. Now, Colonel, he's invaded a country that wanted to join NATO. Colonel Richard Kemp, retired senior British Army soldier. He was at the top, former commander of armed forces in Afghanistan, 2003, is with us this evening, as is the former Tory Minister, Weena Curry. Good evening to you, Weena.
Hello there, hello.
Good evening, and good evening to you, Colonel Kemp.
Good evening, good to be with you. So,
Richard, you've said that you think it is now time to contemplate assassinating Putin.
Well, what I actually said was that I believe that NATO's primary strategic objective should be to get rid of Putin, because Putin represents a singular threat, not just to the people of Ukraine, who he's been murdering for nearly 2 weeks now, but also people of Europe beyond that. And he needs to go. Now, my firm preference would be for him to be brought down by people in his own country. That's what really must happen, one way or another. I don't actually mind how he's brought down, but I believe he should be brought down, and it should be by his own people, because I don't think that external powers like the UK, the US, etc., who go about trying to directly bring him down, necessarily do good in the long run. I think it sometimes has a tendency to gather and solidify his own support around him.
But Richard, you did say to me at the weekend, if it was an assassination attempt, for whatever it takes to bring him down, why weren't we saying this when he was attacking Chechnya?
I don't mind him being assassinated if that's what happens. It's not. It's you know, his life to me is worth no more than the life of each one of the many people that he's murdered in Ukraine. Assassination is a way of ending his the threat he poses. It's a way of ending the murder of people in Ukraine. So I don't mind if that happens. It really, I mean, we've seen assassinations of violent leaders who have threatened us in the past, like Osama bin Laden, like the head of the Islamic State, like the leader of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is a major terrorist organization. All of these people have been assassinated.
But this is the leader of a country which sits on the UN Security Council, Colonel Kemp.
To assassinate Adolf Hitler. Sorry, say it again.
This is the leader of a country which sits on the UN Security Council.
Yeah, the leader of a country that has carried out an illegal invasion of another sovereign state and has brutally murdered from the air, from the sea, and from land many, many people, including, we saw this morning, you've already reported on it, a hospital, maternity wards, children, women giving birth. I mean, yeah. So he's on the Security Council. So what? He has been murdering people by the use of his armed force, the illegal use of his armed forces, for 2 weeks now, and he threatens much greater devastation and carnage than that throughout Europe.
I want to bring my other guests in, but you also think that it is time to contemplate enforcing a no-fly zone. Now, Putin has made it clear we do that, and there could be consequences beyond what we've ever seen before. In fact, I think we can hear him say this.
If anyone tries to stand in our way or even threaten our country, our people, they should know Russia will respond immediately, and this will lead to such consequences, the likes of which you have never experienced in your history.
And NATO are holding back. You think we should get in there, do you?
If you see a neighbourhood bully threatening you or smacking you around the head, you don't run away and expect that he's going to be nice to you. You have to hit him back if he's hitting you. And I think that it's certainly NATO should have contemplated direct military intervention in Ukraine. I beg your pardon. I don't know if they've got adequate forces in place yet to be able to do that, because of course if you do prod the bear, you've got to be prepared for him to prod back, probably with significant force. So you've got to be able to defend the other countries around Ukraine as well.
That's kicking off World War III then, isn't it? But what you're then bringing this into World War III.
Yeah, you can if you want. Do you want to walk down the street with a group of your friends, see one of your other friends getting beaten up by a gang of thugs on the other side? You chuck him a rock to help defend himself, and then just stand watching. No, if a country like Ukraine, it's a sovereign state. The fact it's not a member of NATO is irrelevant, in my opinion. That's a legal technicality. Then I really do think that history will judge us very, very harshly in this moment for not taking action to protect the lives of people in a state neighbouring Europe, neighbouring NATO, in the same way as history today is judging very, very harshly the actions of the people that appeased Hitler in 1938. If Hitler had been wiped out in the 1930s rather than appeased, then we would not have had 70 million people killed during the Second World War. We want to stop that from happening now. The best way is to get rid of Putin.
Pater to being the whole ethos or the whole policy of Ireland, neutrality, that they are not getting involved in any military support of Ukraine. Germany have changed that policy, as I said earlier. The United Kingdom, United States, we are helping with weaponry. Can Ireland continue, do you think, to credibly not support militarily Ukraine when children's hospitals are being bombed?
Well, first of all, it's absolutely horrendous to see what has happened today. It's a war crime to bomb a civilian target, and it goes beyond that when you're talking about a hospital, especially a children's hospital or maternity hospital.
We don't know if they've deliberately bombed it.
Even so, if a person is involved in a lethal force, that person has a responsibility to use that force in such a way as not to break the law and not to allow for citizens to be killed. So it's absolutely wrong. Ireland has a role. There's no doubt about that. We need to have a strong role. Our role, we believe, in AIM2, should be a humanitarian role, first and foremost. Absolutely, there's a need for oxygen and blood supplies in the hospitals in the Ukraine at the moment. There's people fleeing. There's 2 million people fleeing in really cold temperatures. There's need for clothing for those people.
But if every country took this position, if every country provided just humanitarian aid, There'd be a lot more people dead in Ukraine right now.
But it's not. Ireland has a long history. Ireland is different than every country.
So had Germany.
We have a long history of neutrality.
So had Germany.
And Germany's entitled to make the decision it wants to make. But the point I'm making is that we have a competency, we have a skill, we have a reputation as an honest broker internationally because of our peacekeeping work, because of our humanitarian work. We should be actively using that neutrality to try and de-escalate the situation in Russia.
Sorry to cut across you. I believe we can go live to an MP in Ukraine, actually. He's one of the youngest MPs, Zedislan Urash. Zedislan, you're live on the BBC tonight. Thank you for speaking to me. And we're having a discussion here with a politician who's talking about Ireland's neutrality. They will not support Ukraine militarily. And we're wondering what we do now when we see children's hospitals being blown up. Sorry, we just need to try to sort the sound out with...
Sorry, yes.
There you go, Zeslan. Let's try again.
I was saying that it's far worse than that. Russia's attacking all across our 1,000-kilometer border, plus 500 kilometers with their proxy Belarus, and also from the Crimea and across the Black Sea coast. Fact of the matter is, much humanitarian catastrophe is happening all across my country every single day. And the point here, all those neutrality decisions will be reconsidered as those videos pile up and pile up and pile up on your social media, and the cries to do something about this humanitarian catastrophe Russia is causing and threatening Europe with develops. So all these calls for neutrality is a sad story to me. Nothing is enough. All is welcome, all is needed. So I welcome every single bit of support we're getting, but so much more is needed for us to have a fighting chance against the second biggest army in the world.
We have a former commander of armed forces in Afghanistan, Zedislan, Richard Kemp, Colonel Kemp, with us tonight. He is saying it is now time to enforce the no-fly zone, and he is saying that Putin should be taken out by any means.
It's a long time coming. Putin has done incredible damage to international order throughout his presidency, throughout his dictatorship of Russia. He has attacked targets in Europe using chemical weapons. He's undermined democracies all over the world. He has brokered regimes that are doing unbearable horror to their population. He has time and time again proven that he is a destroyer of international rules and regulations. And the point is, to let him have any place in any international organization or conference or international institution of any sort is a mistake. So the point is, as far as this nation is concerned, that certainly takes him out of the picture. But so much more is needed to transform Russia into the modern law-abiding state.
I just want us to run these pictures again of what's happened at this children's hospital. The UN saying that 18 hospitals have been targeted by the Russians. While we're looking at these pictures again, Tim and Bangor, thanks for calling BBC Northern Ireland tonight. You're an ex-serviceman, you're ex-Royal Navy. You served in Ukraine in 2008. Tell me what you're thinking as you're watching these pictures.
Stephen, it's harrowing to actually, just see this. Having been to Sevastopol, which is now controlled by the Russians in Crimea, and then Mariupol, which seemingly looks like it's under Russian control. But I'm literally watching on TV now, and I can see the devastation. This is not a war in any means. This is destruction. It's a Russian sort of dictatorship trying to kill off innocent people. This isn't a war. A war is when the military fight against the military, but this isn't the military fighting the military. This is innocent.
Well, this is what happens.
Civilians.
This is what happens in a war. So, do we bring war to our door, to our people, by protecting the Ukrainians? Do we do that?
But Stephen, I sort of bring the point here is that where do the Russians stop at this point? Do they stop at so once they take Ukraine, do they look at Poland? Do they where is next? Their Soviet sort of era attitude is coming back again, where they want to control so much. Well, and Putin is I would suggest completely out of control. And the fact that we're looking now at sanctions, and the world are putting so many sanctions on. But more importantly,
let me cut to Winna Curry if you don't mind. And I'm sorry to cut across you. There are lots of people trying to get in touch with us tonight. 03030 80 55 55. Edwina Curry, should we be going further? Can we really stand back any longer when we're seeing hospitals and pregnant mums being stretchered out of them, bombed?
Well, as your Ukrainian MP has just pointed out, this is not an isolated incident. It's quite clear that these soft targets, these civilian targets, are being deliberately targeted. And that puts us into the realm of war crimes. So I don't want to see Putin assassinated, certainly not by any of our hands. I want to see him in The Hague as a war criminal, and that could happen sooner or later. I don't agree with Mr. Kemp, with Richard Kemp, with the greatest respect. We are doing a great deal. We have done a great deal. A lot of the weaponry that's in use in Ukraine has been provided by Britain. We were training Ukraine soldiers before this conflict actually started. I believe we've trained.
Are we not going to have to go in sooner or later?
I don't think so, for two reasons, if I may, Stephen. One is the Ukrainians actually appear to be winning. This is not being reported on the BBC uniquely, but it's being reported on Channel News and ITV and some of the others. And indeed, it's all over Twitter. They're doing very, very well indeed. And the second reason, of course, is...
Winning in what sense? Their cities are being decimated. We've seen over 1 million people fleeing from their homes. And you use the word winning?
I think the Ukraine military seem to be doing a very good job, and it looks as if they're actually reducing. It's over half of Putin's entire armed forces are in action in Ukraine, and they seem to be reducing most of them to a complete standstill. The groups that are causing a lot of this damage that we can see seem to be small in lumber and specialist units, which, again, the Ukrainians on the ground are the people to be doing this. But let's mention economic warfare, because the people who will really bring Putin down are those who are closest to him. And that's particularly the Russian middle class. They are hugely affected, adversely affected, not just by the closure of McDonald's and all the specialist shops, but by the collapse in the value of the ruble, by the fact they can't go anywhere, they can't fly anywhere, by the way in which their families are being affected by this. We're talking about millions of people, not just a few thousand. They're the ones who will eventually home to Putin, because he cannot rule without their support.
Colonel Kemp, do you think we're winning? Do you think the Ukrainians are winning?
Unfortunately, I don't. I'd like to. I wish I did agree with Edwina on that. But unfortunately, I think, you know, I know that the Ukrainians have put up stiff resistance against the Russian invasion, but we can't believe, unfortunately, that the damage statistics, the number killed from the Russians by Ukraine, the number of aircraft shot down, the number of tanks destroyed, we can't believe that. We can't believe the statistics from either side. We don't really know. What we do know is that inexorably, grindingly, the Russian army is advancing through Ukraine. They've secured virtually the whole of the south coast. They're still, I believe, about to carry out an assault against Odessa, which will effectively secure the whole of the south coast, cut Ukraine off from the sea, capture all the seaports. And meanwhile, they're moving in on Kiev, they're moving in on Kharkov, they're moving in on some of the other cities. And eventually, if they don't get the Ukrainians to capitulate before that, they will start fighting, I think, street by street and shelling the hell out of those cities.
Let's keep going.
And that's unfortunately, I think, what's likely to happen. I hope it doesn't.
Let's keep going into people's homes throughout Northern Ireland tonight to get opinions on this evening. Tom in Belfast next. Hello, Tom. There's the number on your screen if you want to take part tonight. Hello, Tom.
Hi, Stephen. The thing that isn't being mentioned here is the fact that we're in the 21st century. We're not in the 20th century. Ireland sitting on the fence, as they did during the Second World War, when incidentally they actually did supply the Allies and help the Allies more than the devil ever wanted anybody to know about. So this nonsense about there being a history of neutrality is absolute rubbish. But they're sitting on the fence.
Well, I think Patrick Devine wants to reply to you.
Yeah, so Ireland is not neutral with regards to what's right and wrong here. You know, Ireland wants to use tools to stop this war and to protect the Ukrainians.
It's not military tools.
We don't
want to fight. It wants to fight
absolutely.
Bombs.
So we want to use economic
bullets with what?
We want to use economic tools, and Edwina is right on this point. So, for example, right now there are billions of Russian rubles sloshing around the Irish economy at the moment because they're circumventing international sanctions. Our country could be far more strict on those, putting far more economic pressure on Putin through those economic sanctions. The idea that, you know, we are in any way neutral with regard to what's right and wrong is incorrect. We need to get rid of the Russian ambassador
What are
out of Ireland.
sanctions in a small country like Ireland going to do to influence Vladimir Putin?
Well, I agree with you to a certain extent because in this whole question that we're being asked, we need to know our limits. We need to be realistic. The idea that Ireland enters the war, Stephen, and then things change is also ludicrous. The reality is we need to know where our skills are, where our capabilities are.
I've spoken, when I've been doing 5 Live, I've been doing the Nolan show on Radio Ulster. I've literally spoken to many Ukrainians pleading for military help, saying that do we not understand that they can fight as hard as they can with their bare hands, but they can't fight what's in the sky.
Sure, and there's absolutely a role for that, and countries are doing it. But also, people are crying out for humanitarian assistance, for medical assistance, for all the type of assistance that's needed in a war-torn area. And this country, and in Ireland, we need to do far more to do that.
Neil Richmond doesn't agree with you. The Fine Gael TDs is also joining us this evening. Tell us why, Neil. Good evening.
Good evening, Stephen. Well, I think it's quite clear that we say we stand with Ukraine, we're in full solidarity, but we in Ireland aren't in full solidarity. We have done a lot. Over 20 million euro has been raised in the past fortnight by Irish people for the Red Cross. We've given huge humanitarian aid. We've taken in over 2,500 refugees. We will take up to 100,000. That's all very welcome, but we can do more. We have over 100 Javelin missiles sitting in Kildare now that could be sent to Ukraine to be used by the Ukrainian army to perhaps stop 100 tanks. We have the ability to contribute to massive levels of EU funding for weaponry for the Ukrainian army. We opted out. My own government opted out, and I think that is a cop-out. We need to be giving full support. And
why are there missiles in Kildare if Ireland's a neutral country?
Well, Ireland's a militarily neutral country that still maintains the defence forces, but I think it is a sham of military neutrality, as I've said many times. And quite frankly, this idea, Patter, that we can somehow be an honest broker, we know what Vladimir Putin thinks of us as an honest broker. We saw a cyber attack originating from Russia cripple our health system last year. We've seen the ambassador label us as one of the most antagonistic countries towards Russia. And as we've all seen the images, the Russians are bombing hospitals of women and children.
Let's come back.
We can no longer cop out and sit on the sideline.
We can absolutely, Neil, we can absolutely invest in our defence forces. And I would absolutely encourage Fine Gael to start investing in cybersecurity, in our naval patrols, in our soldiers, so we can actually defend this country. But that does not mean that we have to go down and get rid of neutrality. And remember, the end game on this is for Fine Gael is the end. Just let me finish this point, if I can. The end game for Fine Gael and the government is to actually for Ireland to participate in the European army, and then you are aligned to a military bloc which you can't control. Then you have your sons and daughters going over to wars, and you can't control that decision.
I want to head into our homes again tonight and to Newton Arts next with Thomas. Hello, Thomas.
Hello. I kind of agree with the corporal, so I do. And
with Colonel Kemp, he was a corporal a long time ago. He's a colonel now.
Well, colonel, yeah. Sorry.
Sorry about that, Richard.
But basically, I think Putin should be just assassinated because he's destroying everything. So he is.
When you say Putin should just be assassinated, what happens if you just miss?
Trust me, if I had a chance, I would miss.
Right.
But can I just say, if internationally we're going to start assassinating leaders of countries that have gone in and bombed civilians, well then countries like such as America and Britain, who have bombed in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Libya, in all these countries, if we're going to throw out the rule of law when it comes to these types of actions, well then many leaders of countries are going to be in trouble.
A group of husbands, fathers and sons left Ireland just a few days ago. It was February the 20th, from memory, to fight against Vladimir Putin. Now, Nolan Live has caught up with them today at a secret location. They believe that they were less than 7 kilometres from Russian troops. A few weeks ago, they had tools in their hands, these people. Now they have automatic weapons.
Yesterday we traveled from our base over to the position where we are right now. Our route was through the Kiev, and we'll see lots of, we'll see lots of the broken cars, abandoned cars, and then obviously all the time we hear sound like artillery walking around here, around city. It's only Ukrainian people who can fight with Russians. And obviously you already know so many great examples when Ukrainian people with bare hands go on the streets and stop Russian troops, to move in the town or villages, So, and this is the great sound or sign of encouragement, for everyone else who has the weapons in their hands to fight furiously, with Russian troops. I am 51 years old, and my military experience was 30 years ago. So, and look on this guy. He's only, how old? 21. He's only 21.
What's his name?
Andrew. Andrew, who is joining us from the western part of Ukraine. He's only 21.
So how does Andrew know how to shoot a gun professionally and attack the Russians? He's 21. He's never done this in his life before.
What experience they have? They have strike ball experience. Strike ball. That kind of military games. Like very popular in Ireland too. When people have going on the field.
Yeah, video games. With him as a 21-year-old playing a video game, that's not giving him...
It's not a video game, no. It's an actual kind of military... It's paramilitary training. When you... In Ireland, you will see as well, like it's like airsoft or strike ball, that kind of thing.
Airsoft? Oh, paintball?
Yeah, kind of like that, the kind of like that.
Like it is incredible, though. It's just incredible, and the surreal nature of this war, that someone that's had a game of paintball is now for real life fighting the Russians.
Yeah, it is. That's it's all about. That's another explanation why myself or Alex or Vadim joined these forces as well, because we already men who has the kids which already grew up, So for us, it's easier to make the decision to fight.
I was a student when start war in Ukraine.
And what's your message to Putin?
Putin, I kill you.
Yep.
Putin, welcome to hell.
It's just surreal, isn't it? It's like the training that they've got is paintball. It's surreal. Sean in County Donegal. Hello, Sean.
Hello, Stephen. How are you?
Welcome to BBC One. Tell us what you think, Sean.
Well, I would be quite lefty in my own politics, I'd be certainly no warmonger, but I certainly strongly believe that the Republic of Ireland should be in NATO. I think it's long past time that the Republic should have been in NATO, and I think that this is a real wake-up call. What this man Putin is doing over in the eastern part of our own continent is a threat to us all, really, and especially when you consider that the Republic of Ireland claims such a large territorial water, and yet we've no real capability to protect it. And if the Republic gets in, I know the Russian Air Force has been flying on past the coast of my own county, County Donegal, quite regularly over the past year or 2 years or so. And again, pretty much the Irish government has to look for the RAF to come in and sort of shadow them, It's no excuse that, there's other small European states, such as the Baltic states and Finland and so on, that have an excellent military. I know Finland isn't in NATO, they're having that discussion.
I think I need to take a couple of quid off RTE tonight with a range of calls we're getting here. Here's Art. Stay there, Sean. Art in County Laois. You disagree with Sean in County Donegal here, or tell him why.
Well, I wouldn't say I strongly disagree, but I'd be kind of, Pather has said a lot of what I think, and I've been living down in south of the border. I'm a dairyman, but I've been living south of the border for 50 years, and, I've had friends in the Irish Army, and we can be really, really, Pather was right, we can be really proud of the record of the Irish Army and getting, and I mean that, If you look at the list of the places that the Irish Army has been involved in... Is this not a test now?
Is this not a test right now when we see what's happening right now? Colonel Kemp, maybe I can ask this question of you. Do you think Putin's going to stop at Ukraine? And if he doesn't, how far do you think he's going to go if he's not stopped?
I think we have to make the assumption that he will not stop at Ukraine. He might, once he's assuming he does secure his victory in Ukraine, once he's done that, then he's got to. I guess he's got to then occupy at least part of that country in some way, and may face a long-term insurgency which ties quite a lot of his forces down. He may also go on to carry out attacks and to take over parts of, for example, the Baltic states, which he also regards as illegitimate as he regards Ukraine. Maybe he'll go on in the south through his drive through Odessa and into Moldova and take over Moldova.
But if nobody's buying his gas or oil, then how is he going to fund all that?
Sorry, say that again.
If nobody's buying his gas or his oil, how is he going to fund this war?
Well, I think those the gas and oil he can't sell have been, I think China has said it will take pretty much all of it, and I've no doubt they will pay him handsomely to do so. Russia is already the number one recipient of Chinese funding in the world, anywhere in the world, of any country. So I think he's not going to. Obviously, there's great suffering going to be imposed by the restrictions, but I don't think it will necessarily stop him. Particularly as, let us say, there's a gap between the end of the Ukraine campaign and whatever he decides to do next, whether it's a gap of months or years. And at that stage, I'm pretty confident the EU and other Western countries will ease off on the sanctions anyway, because they always do.
Just come in there to say, like, economics is absolutely key here. And China is not stupid either. China's going to make decisions on the basis of its own economic interests in relation to this. There's no doubt that cutting off supply of Russian gas and oil to Europe will radically hurt the Russian oligarchs. And, if they find that their standard of living crashes at this time, Putin's situation is going to become untenable. Already 1 million people in Russia have signed a petition to end the war. If those 1 million people are forced to get onto the streets with regards to what's happening in Russia because of economic reasons, there is the most significant chance, I believe, of actually bringing this war to an end.
Rodney and Lisburn next. Welcome to BBC One, Rodney. Go ahead.
Hiya, Stephen. Is NATO scared of Russia? Because if we don't get in first there and sort this country out, he's going to press the button anyway. He's lost the plot.
But you've seen, history will tell you that when a country gets into war, it can take decades to get back out again.
No, it'll not. He's going to press the button anyway. And, them people in Ukraine are getting slaughtered.
So when you see those pictures we've shown you tonight...
I've watched it since the war started.
And so are you saying it's gone too far? We've got to risk World War III to stop it. Is that what you're saying?
You may as well say World War III started now, because he'll not stop at Ukraine, and he'll go into other countries and he'll press the button anyway, because he knows he's done for.
All right, listen, thank you very much. Thank you to all my guests tonight. I'm sure we'll continue talking about this on the radio show tomorrow morning. Wherever you are in Northern Ireland, whatever the news story is, I want you to be part of it. And that's the whole ethos of every Nolan show we do.
When the news gets real.
Our lives are at risk. That's the bottom line here.
When a policy becomes personal.
My son hasn't done a full year of education in 3 years.
When one person's attitude leads to another's pain.
I just can't take no more of it. I really can't.
When it comes to what matters to you, get beyond the headlines. Nolan. Get real.
This is just a news story until it's you waiting for an ambulance.
Watch on iPlayer. Listen on Sounds.
Now, next tonight, the creator of Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling, has hit out at Labour politicians after they refused to define the meaning of the word woman. Labour's Shadow Woman and Equalities Minister, Annalise Dodds, struggled to give a definition on the BBC this week.
Labour's definition of a woman?
Well, I have to say that there are different definitions legally around what a woman actually is. I mean, you look at the definition within the Equality Act, and I think it just says someone who is adult and female, I think, but then doesn't say how you define either of those things. I mean, obviously, that's then you've got the biological definition, legal definition, all this kind of thing.
With respect, I didn't ask for that. What's the Labour definition?
Well, I think with respect, Emma, I think it does depend what the context is, surely. I mean, surely that is important.
So it depends what the context is to define a woman. Is what is between your legs, does that define whether you're a woman or not? Can you be a woman if you have a penis? Or is being a woman about who you feel you are inside? Well, let's discuss this this evening. Peter Tatchell with us tonight. Good evening to you, Peter.
Good evening.
You know, Peter, this is a debate that isn't going away. Here we go again. Ella Whelan is with us, by the way, this evening as well. Hello, Ella. Good to have you. Good to have you with us. So Labour cannot give a definition of what it means to be a woman, Peter. What is going on?
I don't think any politician who you ask will be able to give a definition. It's not just Labour, it's the Conservatives, the Liberal Democrats, and the rest of them. The issue for me is very, very clear. There is a very important thing called biological sex. That is a reality. There's also something else called gender identity. That is also a reality, and it is also valid. So I don't want to see biological sex pitched against gender identity. They are different, but both are valid. So, for example, a trans woman is not the same as a biological woman. But that's okay. It's okay to be different. And I don't think it's helpful to try and create these divisions or reinforce these divisions when we know that even biological sex itself is highly contested territory. You know, biological sex is not defined by one thing like chromosomes or genitals.
Yeah.
It includes things like hormones.
But some people, Peter, might think some people might think we've got to a ludicrous situation that on International Women's Day, that's what this question was asked, we've got a political party that can't define what it means to be a woman anymore. Aisling in Derry. Hello, Aisling.
Hello, Stephen.
Go ahead. What do you think?
I mean, women have fought for their rights for years. And this not defining what a woman is, it's diluting all of these rights that have been fought for. And the female sex, it's taken it away from us.
So what's your definition of a woman?
A woman is someone who can bear offspring. She produces eggs. She's distinguished biologically by the fact that she can reproduce. That is what a woman is. Female.
Plenty of females cannot have children, and nobody questions their femininity. Sharon in Grey Abbey. Hello, Sharon. The number will come up on your screen if you want to be part tonight. Go ahead, Sharon.
Hi, Stephen. Well, as far as I'm concerned, I am really outraged that women have taken hundreds of years to get even close to equality. And here we are, 1% of the total population of the UK have got gender issues, and I have every sympathy with them. But should I, as a female, a proud female who nurtured, a mother, a grandmother, a wife, a sister, should I give up my right to be called a person, you know, with a womb?
Well, no one's asking you to give up that right, are they? But they're asking you to understand those people who may have been born biological male and may now choose that they want to be a woman. Ella Whelan, you're shaking your head, I think. Why not?
We are being asked to be called persons and not given our proper title. We have fought. Look, 400 years ago, women were being burnt at the stake. We have come a long way. We have a bit more to go, and I'm sure not going to give up my right, my femininity, to 1% of the population who feel missed.
Ella Whelan, let me let Ella reply to this. Ella?
Well, I think Peter makes a really important point that we seem to now be afraid of talking about difference. And the reason why Annalise Dodds and later on in the day, Yvette Cooper and other Labour MPs were asked about defining the word woman is because the Labour Party is pushing changes to the Gender Recognition Act, which would basically allow people who want to self-ID as a woman to do so more easily. And the line from the Labour Party is that you must repeat the words "trans women are women," which is asserting, as Peter says, it's asserting that there is no difference, that there is no distinguishing between a trans woman who I think all of us agree have every right to, be who they are, live how they like without any kind of repression or discrimination, but that women have to, and it's funny that it is always women. We very rarely talk about trans men or men having to accommodate anything. It always is women having to make space, that women have to repeat these words, trans women are women. Now, this is a party, the Labour Party, who, a few months ago, when one of its own members, Rosie Duffield, supported the statement, criticised the statement as saying not all women have cervixes.
How would you define a woman?
If I just say, Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, said it is not right, it is wrong and bad and evil to say that women are the only ones who have cervixes.
How would you, Ella, define a woman?
I think for most people, it's really pretty easy. Most people, it is along the kind of biological lines. There are obviously philosophically, socially, politically, we understand that, as you nicely put it at the start, Stephen, we're more than just what's between our legs. Of course we are. We're most of it is about what's up here in our brains. That's the more important thing. Actually, most women don't go around thinking of themselves as women. They think of themselves as Ella Whelan, as Sinead, as someone else. But when it's coming down to asserting either in law or in important spaces like prisons, like schools, like changing rooms, I think you have to go along with what most people understand as the biological definition that, for example, understands that when kids grow up, different things happen to them.
And Peter Tatchell, is this not the point that you need to understand the difference in law between the sexes? You need to understand what it means when we describe someone as a man or a woman. When you're writing legislation, definitions need to mean something.
Well, absolutely. But biological sex is a spectrum. It's a range of different attributes, not one single thing. There are about 6 or 7 different aspects that distinguish men and women. So chromosomes are one. Then there is genitals. Then there's also secondary sex characteristics like breast or body hair. There's also hormones. There's also gonads, testicles or ovaries. There's a whole range of different things. And very importantly, new research since 1995 in 10 different studies has shown there is a difference in the brain structures and processes of trans people compared to non-trans.
Let me bring in some of our callers. Before I do so, Harry Potter's author J.K. Rowling has been making her views known on Twitter about the issue in recent days. Let's just have a look. J.K. Rowling says, someone please send the Shadow Minister for Equalities a dictionary and a backbone. And there are some other flavour tweets from J.K. Rowling about that. Margaret in Derry. Hello, Margaret.
Hello.
Very quickly for me, Margaret.
Yeah. I am a lesbian, right? And I identify, obviously I'm a woman and I have everything intact. But how can people say that people aren't female? If you identify as female, you should be female. If I wanted to identify as a male, I should be allowed to do that.
Yeah.
But I'm not, I'm not saying I want to be a male. But what I'm saying is people should be allowed to identify as what they want to be. And
should you be allowed to change how you identify, on a Monday you're a woman, on a Tuesday you're a man, Wednesday back to a woman again?
Look, there are people like that, but do you know this year, people can be who they want to be. we live in a society that judges people by your looks, by your identity, your sexual identity, what clothes you wear. Surely you should be able to do that.
Okay, Margaret, thank you. Jeff, I can give you about 40 seconds in Belfast. Go on, Jeff.
Yes, good evening, Stephen. This is a very, 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 very important debate.
You've just ate up 10 seconds. Come on.
Where do the political parties in Northern Ireland stand on this issue, Stephen? I would like to know.
Why?
Because it's election year, Stephen. It's election year, Stephen, and the people have a right to know what the political parties' views on this issue is. I mean, the next mandate, our MLAs will be voting on this very important issue of transgender rights.
Well, do you know what we'll do? We'll contact all the political parties tomorrow, and we'll ask them for their definition of a woman. Listen, the Nolan team have made a 10-part series, a podcast on this. It's called Nolan Investigates Stonewall. Big investigation and thorough analysis of all of the different issues here. So maybe you want to head on to BBC Sounds if you want to know a lot more about this. Let me thank my guests. Have a look at this. Have public bodies across the UK been captured by the lobby group Stonewall? The Scottish Government, they have removed mother from their maternity policy after Stonewall asked them to. Even Parliament, they signed up to Stonewall's league table. Should they have done?
This year, Stonewall has announced that we have achieved a place in its index of the top 100 LGBT-friendly employers.
And this league table, created, judged and scored by Stonewall? Should public bodies have got themselves into the situation where they're endorsing its credibility by publicly wanting to climb up it? And here's the twist. Whether you agree with them or not, you are paying for it. Has Stonewall's influence shifted public policy far beyond what our politicians actually legislated for?
Can I suggest to the Minister that people should not face dismissal from their jobs for suggesting that women cannot have a penis?
And what about the BBC? Why was the BBC working closely with a political lobby group? We will explain it all in Nolan Investigates Stonewall. Listen now on BBC Sounds. There it is, and our thanks to Peter Tatchell and Ella Whelan tonight. Now, our last story this evening. Last month, Stormont agreed to enact legislation which brings us into line with the rest of the UK, whereby we will now be opted in by default when it comes to donating our organs. But organ donation isn't something that only happens after we die. There are living donors. And with tomorrow being World Kidney Day, we want to do our bit to flag this issue and put it in your radar so that you can think about it. And here's a story about a special little boy. His name is David McKenna. He's in a race against time. David desperately needs a new kidney, and he needs it soon. Behind the cheeky smile and his display of bravado, this is a little boy enduring pain and fighting for his life. He has a friend, a new friend, and that's our Vinny.
Every Friday, I've had a very special guest on my show. David McKenna from North Belfast.
Right, enough. Let me sing. In Dublin's fair city, where girls are so pretty.
David is destined for big things and has a passion for theatre and for music. Did you go for the part of Whippy, of Dolores?
No!
What'd you go for and what'd you get?
Well, I really went for Curtis, but then I ended up getting Joey.
Yeah, I can see you pulling that off.
And I have to try and romance the nuns.
Say that again.
I have to romance the nuns.
But behind all the fun, there's a serious reason why David has been on the show. At only 2 weeks old, he was rushed into intensive care, and that is when his battle truly began. His mum, Elizabeth, will forever remember that moment.
It felt like an angel had just walked in, and I remembered she was wearing a white top, and she said, "I'm David's renal consultant. I don't know exactly what's going on, but your son, his kidneys aren't working." They brought us into a room and they said, "Your son has chronic kidney disease and he's going to need a transplant." And you're like, right.
Years of painful treatment followed as David fought for his life. And when he was just 4 years old, he received a kidney from his dad, Jim. However, it soon became clear to Elizabeth that her relief was to be short-lived.
I remember it stopped me in my tracks. The first clinic appointment after the transplant, and I said, "So does David still have a disability?" And the consultant said, "Yes, he does. And transplant is a form of treatment." And I remember thinking, whoa, hold on a wee minute here. This was the answer to my prayers.
And that time for a new kidney has now come for David, as he is scheduled to enter the transplant pool in November. It's a race against time.
In the meantime, we have to find a donor who, and if a live donor comes along who is willing to donate to David and is a match, that's the preferred option, but at the moment we don't have that option. He's just a superstar, and he looks, he looks well. He looks so to the normal Joe Blogs on the street or to the normal parent in the playground. He looks fine, but behind that there is so much going on, and we're just so proud of him every day.
And every Friday, David inspires me with his spirit and his happiness. So I've set up a little surprise for him, a trip to his favourite place, the Grand Opera House in Belfast. And I have someone special waiting in the wings. You yourself could be on the stage here one day. Is that what you would like to do?
Oh yeah.
Why? Tell me.
You know me, Vinny. I don't know how to explain these things.
What would you be up there doing?
Singing.
And is that a way to forget about the health issues, going to the doctor,
Yeah.
injections?
Well, I don't entirely forget about it, but
No, but when you're up there, when you're on a stage,
it takes
when
my
you're
mind
singing,
off it.
yeah. And when it comes to the challenges ahead, David is his usual positive self.
But I know it's gonna help me.
Yeah.
I know that. I know I don't like it, but I know it's gonna help me.
Yeah.
I know that.
Here, hello. Here, I'm looking for some wee critter called David.
Hello.
David McKenna.
Hello.
Come on, son.
Here, run me over.
Never mind. Come on.
David's dream of singing on this famous stage is about to come true, and hopefully, for a brief moment, his mind will be off his treatment.
In Dublin's fair city, where the girls are so pretty, I first set my eyes on sweet Molly Malone, as she wheeled her wheelbarrow through streets broad and narrow, crying cockles and mussels, alive, alive, oh.
Where did you get that one from? That is excellent.
Thank you.
Have you ever heard me singing?
No.
I've a real hard time with no infection in my chest.
Today has been magical, but it's the search for David's life-saving kidney that must take centre stage now.
David, thank you for being the star of our show tonight. Thanks, everyone, for watching. We'll see you tomorrow morning for Nolan at 9. Sleep well. See you in the morning. Night-night.